Well, hello again, and welcome to this session on Autodesk Revit 2014, showcasing what's new and really what's applicable to you. So let's get to it. A great thing about the new release of 2014 is that because it's, again, part of the suite, you have new enhancements that apply to all trades, architects, MEP engineers, and structural engineers. So what I'll be focusing on this particular session is just on the architectural enhancements, the new features that can be really allow you to improve certain things that are time consuming, and I'll focus on some of those. So in terms of what's new that is applicable to all trades, but very specific and unique to architects, let's start with the building energy analysis feature. The building energy analysis feature allows you to now do something that would take you forever in the past, which was generate a building volume that you can leverage for creating energy studies, which for anybody that's ever done any kind of simulation, you would require to have a building that is sealed and airtight, so that way you don't have any areas that are left out. And it requires a lot of management in terms of how the model is put together, but also how the connections between the elements, like let's say if you have a slope ceiling, a slope roof, you will have to manually go into any areas that were not, or that were a little more organic, and have to bound every part of the building, as well as integrating rooms in places that were not occupied. So this right now, what allows you to do is simply, with a simple model, the way it is, you can start generating an analysis without worrying about the bounding conditions of all the other rooms. So without generating rooms or spaces, you can now generate a space, an energy analysis. So this is definitely something that I would say would shave hours of effort on just doing this kind of task. So another one that is actually one of my favorites, it's displaced elements. So what displaced elements do is a way that you can take a snapshot of your 3D model, break it up, and show sort of how the model is going to be diagrammed, so you can convey your idea a lot better. So think of it like doing like a 3D section or a 3D sort of shop drawing, where you can now displace the model components, and without worrying about breaking the actual building elements, you can now showcase things that were otherwise be more complex to demonstrate. So this is a very great enhancement, and it works well with any different views. So it means that you can do this in a regular 3D view, you can do that in a camera view as well, and you can render it. So the display elements, just to give you sort of a quick rundown, because it's one of sort of the very cool features that you can implement today. There's a very easy button that you just click on, and it automatically gives you the option to select the edges, so it knows where it comes from, and you can drag and drop them and move them around. And just to demonstrate this in a second, here is just a quick way that you can sort of separate this building into pieces, just so you can displace the parts, and that you can sort of showcase and annotate if needed. So this one new feature allows you to do something that would take otherwise a long time in the past, and that would require a little bit of a workaround. Now you can do that pretty quick. Again, all it is just creating a 3D version of the model on a separate view that is not connected to the model itself. So as you can see, it's super fast, super easy, and it's something that you can do right away with any model on any camera view, 3D or even a specific ISO. So another thing that you should be seeing pretty neat is the combination of the different window palettes that you have available. One of them is that you can drag and drop all the palettes on top of each other, and you can just merge them in a way that they can be ducked, and you can sort of have a palette tab that you can flip between. Before, you had to either close or have them all open. Now you can have them on top of each other and tab them, so you can go from one to the other. Very easy, and you can control the customization. A nice feature that you can use. Now, another one is the way that you can control the double clicking. Something simple as that saves a little bit of time in the way that, for example, when you edit elements in Revit, if you double click, it automatically now allows you to jump into the family editor. It will allow you to jump into the sketch of the Revit floor, or the roof sketch, or the stair sketch, even go inside of a group, or go inside of a stair component. So you do even have control on all of those single elements, like families, if you want, what happens when you double click on them. So you would think, well, I only save a second, but the amount of times that you do that every time, it adds up. And if you have a lot of users, forget it, you're shaving off some time right there. Now, one that I think is my favorite It's the ability to bring stuff from outside, break it up inside of Revit, and be able to manipulate it. To give you an example, how many people use the Google Warehouse for SketchUp models? Millions of models are available for free. You can use them for manufacturer specific, let's say Ethan Allen furniture. You want to bring it into Revit, create a family. In the past, it wasn't recommended, it's still not recommended to bring in geometry from outside of outside of Revit and use it as it is. You have to go through some conversion process and flatten it out and use it for reference, but it's not recommended to use the geometry as it is. Well, now you can. Now you can actually bring in the geometry like a SketchUp model, explode it, and this is what will happen. I bring in let's say the piece of furniture, in this case, that particular piece of furniture, I explode it, and what becomes of that is now you have extrusions that you can pull, manipulate, and control and assign parameters to. Really, really cool, because now it saves a lot of time of you starting that from scratch. So definitely that Explode 3D, preserving the freeform element and the editability is a big, big enhancement. Materials. I don't know, I think if I do a survey on how many people love materials, I maybe get no hands up, because it changes every year, and because everything is so sort of hidden, now they realize and they heard the user feedback in terms of the materials. Now everything is in one window. So if you click on the material for concrete, you'll get all the properties right there, what the graphic look like, the rendering information, the appearance, the graphics, the identity for properties. So everything is just within one user window dialog box. And of course, everything is accessible, like I said, from within that window. Oh, and I think out of those things that you can access, which is really cool, and this happens all the time on firms that do not have standards and they don't have an in-place sort of workflow established for things like material. You know how many times I've seen people assigning a material like concrete to a wall, but then they delete that material and forgot because they applied it to something else like the floor. Now they removed it from the floor, but because it was already assigned, it removes it from the wall as well. So now you can actually identify what material is applied to what and see how many objects before you purge them out. So this is good for maintenance. It means that you can now understand, like, okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this material, and a lot of people make their own names and their own, especially interior designers. They create their own carpet types or textures, and if you're cleaning that model and maintaining it, you might at one point get rid of that and not know that you wiped out something else that was already applied to. So there's some additional productivity enhancements, such as aligning objects that can now be done, such as the adaptive components. So some of the things you can do is align surfaces. Another additional feature that they added a couple years ago, which was the ability to tag and annotate in 3D. You can now tag as well the materials. So this is something that sort of enhanced the level of graphics that you used to have before. And I think one of the most requested features that were being asked for in Revit was the ability to create non-rectangular crops for views, whether there were a call out for section or details, whether it was a view simply to show on the sheet. Now you're able to really, what AutoCAD has been able to do for a long time, do it in Revit. But definitely makes it a lot easier. And what I like about it is how easy it is to take something that already exists, like you'll see here, and even if the drawing was updated from 2013 to 2014, you're able to select that crop and edit it just like you edit a floor or any other sketch. So again, it definitely makes it easy for you to really customize how that area is going to be displayed on the sheet. Or even if you want to create a call out or a split section, a split elevation, showing all at the same time on just that area. So again, it doesn't have to be created on the same year release. It can be something that was upgraded from 2012, 2013 to 2014. So very neat, very cool. Another thing that is pretty cool is the Facility Management Kobe kit. For those of you who care about grouping things, and I'll give you an example. For hospitals, you have so many layouts that may be repetitive, like a patient room, that there are certain parameters that you want to schedule, and if you're thinking about facility management, those groups contain certain parameters that when you override them, it overrides the rest. So you now have control to say, this set of groups are different in terms of the values on, let's say, I don't know, if you have a bed that has specific manufacturer, you can actually say, no, this group doesn't have that same manufacturer, even though they look the same. So again, you have a lot more control on the parameters in the groups. And now you have what they call a calculation point, which is a way that you can include areas, let's say a door that was maybe facing out, the room, you can now make sure that it's included in that particular area in the schedule. And talking about schedules, something that hasn't been updated in a long time that finally has is the ability to control it very, very flexibly. So you can now color code things without having to say, if it's only within this value or that value, show me this color. You can now go in and highlight a whole row or a set of columns and say this should be this color or that color. You can still do the formatting based on values, like before. You can say, if my square footage of these rooms are below 200 square feet, everything should show a particular color. So you can now display a lot of things, including adding more control right there on the fly. So it means that you can control the fonts, you can control the text, resize the columns, and you can have all that in that ribbon, a ribbon that wasn't there before for quick access and quick editability. And better yet, you can now change the shading, border type, so the graphics is now a lot better, and you can even include images inside of the cell, which was not available before, and definitely saves a lot of workaround time that you had to do before. And in terms of selection, Revit is great at filtering things out. You can filter things out by category, you can filter things out by a specific filter properties, but you can now filter out a lot of other things, such as any object in the background, you can filter out. And that includes like a cat background that you imported. You can filter out links, you can filter out elements by face, you can drag out elements on the selection. Even the pin objects that are locked, you can filter them out so that it doesn't select them. And it's all accessible in one little ribbon that is always displaying below. And it shows you the quantity of all those elements that you select. So very, very cool. And talking about what I mentioned before, which was related to how you can split and control the view crops, you can now do the same for elevations. Although you have this feature available for sections, you know how many times I saw people faking elevations as sections just so they can do this? So they can create their own workaround, semi-elevation, just using the section tool. Now you can do that with the elevation. Really, really cool. You usually get a standing ovation halfway through this presentation because there's some very cool features. So again, I'll just mention some of the sort of relevant ones. This one is fantastic because the amount of things that you can control sometimes in terms of graphics, you can create a view template, but it's a permanent thing that you apply and you can reapply again. And you can kind of switch on and off, but now you can kind of do temporary templates that you can apply to multiple views that do not affect the original view template. So in terms of graphics, let's say you want to clean up the model, find something in the model, section it, or visualize something, it will require you cleaning a lot of, going through a lot of iterations, or applying a view template that later on you had to remember to reapply again as it was previously set up, so you have the right graphics. So this is something that I know for a fact affected a lot of people that were about to print a whole set for the deadline, and there were stuff that were disappearing because somebody forgot to reapply a view template. So definitely saves a lot of time. And time related is performance. If I can count the amount of people that say Revit is slow, I don't have enough, there's not enough numbers. But it's not related to the program, it's sometimes related to graphics, related to things that you're trying to do, and a lot of graphic intense tasks. You can now control things in the option for graphics mode, where you now have something called optimized navigation. So I know a lot of people had issues, like sometimes depending on the hardware, you could orbit and pan and sort of check things on the screen and it would be shown choppy, or it would show very, very slow. So at least you have now a little more control rather than just say upgrade the graphic card or upgrade the driver. So you now have a little more control on that. And stairs. Stairs were really enhanced last year, but they continue sort of the same effect on, upgrading sort of the line, how you sketch it, how you temporarily dimension things, how it looks in representation, how you snap the things. You can even now specify certain things that were not available, such as the run for the line. So when you draw a stair, it's going to go in one direction or the other, or even specifying the railing, so you can adjust like the run, not the width. So you can have all that preset up front. And of course, you've heard for existing conditions. The biggest problem with Revit and point cloud files, which are those generated of a laser scans, is first of all, there's like 50 manufacturers today that produce laser scan information. Now, whichever you use, like a Faro, Trimble, whichever of those, The problem was that you had to use their custom software in order for you to be able to even utilize it in Revit, or you had to buy some kind of plugin that would allow you to bring that file into it. And it would be so heavy that later on you wouldn't even use it for anything else other than seeing it in the background. Now you're able to use Recap. Recap is that new feature that comes in on the building design suite, but also is available, you can download it for free without even having any of the Autodesk applications. But Recap is a middle platform that you can drag in that point cloud from whatever source, and it would allow you to bring it into Revit, already manipulated. You can crop it, chop it, so you can easily just bring down the file size and the area that you need. And not only that, but use the cloud file, the point cloud file, so you can snap to it and actually draw things on it. So again, that was a very, very, very good enhancement. And some other additional features that, although they're just minor ones, they're still relevant. Dimensioning. The amount of times I've seen firms duplicating views because they needed to ship out a set to outsource it to India, for example. They had to have a metric view and an imperial view, where they have the meters in centimeters versus feet and inches. And now you can have it all in one view. All display has an alternate dimension, so that's really, really cool. And now, for talking about annotation and how it looks in terms of graphics, one thing that was commonly a problem was anything that was hatched in Revit, when you had overlapping lines, you had sort of a weird representation. So now that's something that you can check on and off and really tackle it. And if you do have a little bit of knowledge on programming, there's a ton of enhancements on the API, so you can develop your own plugins and your own add-ons and definitely improve what you can do. And of course, there's some additional features that are great in terms of how you modify the geometry. I only wanted to mention a few. I don't want to show every single feature, but just to show you sort of the ones that are pretty relevant. And this is one of them, which is changing how you join the geometry. So just to finalize and show you a little bit of what the Recap tool was, because it's actually brand new, this is what it is. And it is pretty much a piece of software that allows you to manipulate, navigate, and edit any source of information that comes in from a laser scan. But they have a version called Photo Recap, which allows you to bring in images similar to how Autodesk 123D Catch does it, but it does it directly in Recap, so you can have a little more control, color-code it, layer it, so you can say this area is supposed to be, building aisle 1, or maybe west wing versus east wing, so you can break it up if you want to, and you still are able to later on bring that into Revit and snap to it. So this is really what was lacking before, which was the ability to use in that point cloud data, so you can use it in a way that was practical and without worrying about the heavy geometry by those millions of points. So again, very, very cool amounts of features that are now integrated in 2014. There's a lot of other features that I did not mention that are really, very interesting to explore, and I encourage you to do that. So hopefully this gives you a good idea on what can be, implemented right away on the new features of 2014. Thank you.